Good evening. This Board of Selectmen meeting in the town of Adams on Thursday, November 30th, 2023 is now called to order. I wanted to thank everybody for arranging their schedules to come to a meeting off cycle. But since last week's joint public meeting with Cheshire and Savoy, there were a couple of things that have come up, including Adams Ambulance held a membership meeting on Tuesday. And so I wanted to be able to give the Adams Board of Selectmen some time to hear what's happening, the current status of Adams Ambulance Service Incorporated, talk about the continuity of emergency medical services for the town of Adams, and to have that discussion. So thank you for being with us. I will also note that this meeting is being recorded by Northern Berkshire Community Television. That is the only authorized recording, unless somebody else would like to disclose that they are recording this meeting. They need to do so by informing the chair. Thank you. I recognize Tammy Daniels from iBerkshires as somebody who's indicated that they will be recording. So please keep that in mind. At this time, I'm going to ask our town administrator to provide us an update as to where we are since last Monday's public meeting.
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I have to jump in. I'm going to have to recuse myself based on the Conflict of Interest Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19. I have an immediate family member that works for the Adams Ambulance Service, and based on financial interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please let the minutes reflect that. Thank you. Jay.
I think it's best, as we start the conversation, just in order to put all of this into context, it's important to remember the context as we discuss tonight, because obviously there's a lot of different angles to this. The first item that I'll go back to is the fact that Adams Ambulance Service Incorporated, and I think it's important that people understand this, is not a function of the town of Adams. It is not funded by, managed by, subsidized by, or owned in part or in whole by the town of Adams. And I think it's important for people to know that the name on the side of the ambulance does not reflect public ownership of it. So any indications out there that the town has decided to cease funding its own EMS service is incorrect. The town of Adams is serviced by a nonprofit private entity that is offering EMS coverage to the town of Adams. So that's another item that I think people need to recognize with. The law is very clear that it is the obligation of the EMS provider to the communities they serve to follow a variety of rules and regulations that set a base standard for how they provide EMS coverage to a community. That is called a service zone plan. That is Massachusetts General Laws 111C, and that is also regulated by Code of Massachusetts regulations. The town of Adams, town of Cheshire, does not have a service zone plan. The town of Adams has no legal authority to sit down with Adams Ambulance and dictate how Adams Ambulance provides EMS coverage, or frankly any other EMS provider, to the town. That is an issue, and that needs to be resolved as well. The town of Adams has no legal contract, no service contract, no memorandum of understanding, no memorandum of agreement with Adams Ambulance Service, Inc. to provide EMS coverage to the town. It is just something that has been done. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that is the legal context of which we are working, and I think it's important that we all be reminded of that. Some of us, like myself, that deal with this and they don't accept that, but we have to take a step back and realize that most people sitting at home, or who receive a paycheck from Adams Ambulance, or who receive a paycheck from Northern Berkshire, or who respond mutual aid, does not necessarily understand that context. Their focus is in delivering patient care. We understand that, but it's important for tonight to understand and inform our discussion tonight as to what those legal obligations are. Furthermore, under the law, it's the town's obligation to ensure that its EMS coverage is licensed and that it services the community as it wishes, and we can't do that without a service zone agreement. Since Adams Ambulance Service announced back in September via a newspaper article that it was in financial disrepair, disorganization, financial straits, however you want to classify it, it has focused the town of Adams staff into ensuring that we can provide for EMS coverage of the town. And the conversation within its staff changes from worrying about keeping an independent company alive, to that of which is in the best interest of the town of Adams and town of Cheshire and town of Savoy to provide that EMS coverage to the community. And that is the lens through which our staff, our chief of police, our forest wardens department, our emergency management director, our fire district chief, who has participated in some of these meetings as well, that is the lens that we have been looking through, is how do we provide for continuity of services? And I'm going to get into a little bit of context with dates. So last Monday night was a very comprehensive timeline presented by the town of Cheshire and town of Adams regarding exactly what information the towns knew about the financial situation of Adams Ambulance. Up until November the 6th, frankly, it was unclear to the town as to what the financial solubility or sustainability was of Adams Ambulance Service, Inc. As pointed out at that meeting last week, Adams Ambulance Service, their general manager, did not provide, nor their board of directors provided any time financial information to either community, or three if you include Savoy, as to what their actual financial condition was. And frankly, their general manager was asked by me at a meeting in that room over there, full of public safety people and a few public officials, as to what their budget was. He could not tell us what the operating budget is of Adams Ambulance Service. And yet at the same time, they asked for a public subsidy, an investment by the taxpayer that already funds every other public safety operation in this community for money. So you have to understand the juxtaposition of asking for taxpayer involvement, taxpayer investment, and not be able to respond to a very simple question. I'll also note that again tonight, I do not see the general manager of Adams Ambulance Service in this room. The general manager of Adams Ambulance Service did not appear at last Monday's meeting when they had an opportunity to present in front of Cheshire, Adams, or Savoy. That is a problem. The employees are here, and we recognize that, and we appreciate that, because it is you that's actually providing the service to this town. But it's the obligation of the board of directors and the general manager of that organization. Is that Fred back there? Thanks, Fred. I see, you're hiding back there, you're hiding behind Don's head. Okay, so now we at least have a member of the board here. But it's the obligation on that body, on that board of directors, as an independent nonprofit, to fix these problems. And I just received this, and that's great that there's a plan, and it's up to this board. But at this point, unfortunately, we've had to take the following actions based on this information I'm about to present to you. On November the 6th, the town of Cheshire and the town of Adams and town of Savoy met with Adams Ambulance, two members of their board, as well as their general manager. And at that time, there was no indication that service disruption would occur. At that time, a general consensus was reached that they were in financial straits and that they were looking for a public subsidy, and they needed to find other ways to continue on providing service. At that meeting, a general consensus was reached that it was time to talk about transition because they could not guarantee how long Adams Ambulance Service could continue. And I want to keep hammering that point home because that's what, at the end of the day, is going to be discussed tonight. What is the ability of Adams Ambulance Service to continue offering EMS coverage to this town on a primary basis on a reliable fashion where we are not constantly ping-ponged or put into a corner and threaten public safety and public health because of financial conditions of a private entity that this town has no management control over. That is the context of this, and it's important to recognize that. After that meeting on 11/6, there was an agreement reached by all parties that we meet the following week with Northern Berkshire EMS, and in consistent with the Code of Mass Regulations, of which I'll shortly read and bore you with, unfortunately, a consensus was reached that we would meet and start talking about a transition plan. That is normal when one EMS provider decides to stop providing coverage to another community. A transition plan is sat down and discussed with the community as required by the CMRs. Over that weekend, right before that meeting, and I believe it was approximately sometime on the 10th of November, we began getting indirect commentary that Adams Ambulance Service was ceasing service as of December the 31st. Now, as the town manager of Adams, I am sitting at home on my couch and receive a telephone call telling me that the primary EMS provider responsible for responding to 911 calls in this town is going out of business and stopping service on December the 31st. That is not professional in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's important that I share that with everybody to understand exactly how we were informed, how this board was informed that Adams Ambulance Service was unable to provide EMS coverage. through a telephone call because somebody posted something on social media. At that point, Adams Ambulance Service, we knew we were in financial trouble, but we did not understand the severity of it, or the service would be threatened. And again, that changes the conversation that we have to have, more of a conversation of how are we going to provide for continuity of EMS services. That's the obligation of local government. So at that point, we began to wonder where Adams Ambulance was. We didn't receive any formal notice until Friday, November the 17th at approximately 4:30 in the afternoon, that Adams Ambulance Service was giving notice pursuant to 105 CMR 170 247 that they were ceasing service as of December the 31st. That's a week that the town worked in absolute silence without one word from anybody responsible. Did the employees show up for work? They did. I watched the units go up and down Park Street. But no one made an effort who's in a position of responsibility, accountability, or management arrive at the town of Adams to talk to us about it. So we now had no choice but to act on that letter of communication from their general manager. That now triggered the context of what we're in, and I think it's important to go into a little bit more depth about that. This is a regulated environment. EMS coverage to a community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is regulated by the Department of Public Health in the Office of Emergency Medical Services. When Adams Ambulance Service wrote that letter and gave notice to the state of Massachusetts, the towns of Savoy, Cheshire, and Adams, and I do not have firsthand knowledge if they notified Holly, and that is irrelevant to our conversation tonight, that put us into a position of having to determine how the town of Adams would provide coverage for EMS calls in this community. And we took those steps. The public safety leaders of Adams should be proud of themselves for putting together a plan, and thank Northern Berkshire EMS for standing up when we had no one to say, we will be there for the people of the towns of Adams and Cheshire when 911 is called. And I can tell you, for no other purpose other than sharing it, that I have lost sleep over that, and I know one or two members of this board have lost sleep over it, because it is something that was intolerable for us. So we put together a transition plan. That transition plan was pretty much finalized around November the 19th. The forest wardens, two managers of which in this room should be personally congratulated as well, because without hesitation, without fault, without debate or conjecture or post on Facebook, they stepped up and made room in the forest warden's garage, a publicly owned building, to allow Northern Berkshire to have an ambulance staged in the town of Adams to ensure continuity and effective response times. That is how public safety is supposed to work, whether it's a city or whether it's a town. And I want people at home watching this and listening, that is how public safety is supposed to work, not how this has gone down and happened. And we're going to continue with the public meeting that we had on November the 20th. And on that date, we found out how the employees were almost in the same position in the town of Adams. So as I said in the newspaper, Josh, I see you tonight, and I got your name right tonight, so, yeah. And I thank you for sticking with it. And I cannot apologize because I am not going to create a false relationship of which the town is responsible in any way, but we empathize and we sympathize with you, and we wish it didn't go down this way. But at the end of the day, you are an independent company. And we have an obligation in this community to ensure that the EMS primary provider is capable of doing so and is financially sound to do so, because this is just going to remain a tennis game. And the reason I say that is because on last Monday, we had a public meeting. Employees spoke, Fred spoke from the board, general manager did not attend, and there were mentions of selling the building and other items that frankly just were not necessarily sufficient to make anyone feel comfortable that Adams Ambulance was now in a better financial position in order to provide continuity of service and reliable service. On November the 27th, the town of Adams received notification, along with the town of Cheshire, that it wished to restore service. It provided no mechanism for explaining how that would occur. It offered no additional finances. It offered no details. It was a simple letter that said, we wish to continue service as we have for the last 50 years, and we rescind our previous letter. As I said, once Adams Ambulance Service provided official notice to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it involved, Adams Ambulance now involved, Town of Adams did not, involved the Department of Public Health. The Department of Public Health has been involved since the first letter. We have been in touch with the Department of Public Health at least 2 times a week. The Department of Public Health has approved the transition plan. And I think an important piece of information that no one yet has seemed to talk about, but I will, is the fact that the Department of Public Health has issued a corrective action order for failing to comply with CMRs about a transition plan. In fact, I'm going to read it. And it says, I'll let everybody listen to the tone. Okay. Notification of termination or other change of service. Adams Ambulance Service, Inc. failed to provide, along with its notice of changes in service delivery, a plan to prevent a disruption in EMS service, subject to the approval of the department. And they cite 105 CMR 170.247 Bravo 1. And I'm going to read that so that everybody understands exactly what the legal obligations are of the town and exactly what the legal obligations are of an EMS provider. Because this isn't about spaghetti dinners. This isn't about membership meetings. This isn't about the town administrator and memes on Facebook and all that nonsense. This is about public health and public safety. And this is what regulates it, and it's the obligation of this town to ensure that we provide that coverage. 170.247 states as follows: notification of termination or other change of service. A service shall give written notice in accordance with 105 CMR 170.247 Bravo of the following types of changes with regard to its service delivery. 1. Termination of services. 2. Change in the level of service delivered to a service zone or local jurisdiction. 3. Temporary cessation of services. Or 4. Sudden event that interferes with the level of service it can provide. Bravo 1, notice of changes in 105 CMR 17247A, the preceding section, must be provided in writing to the following entities. A, the department, meaning the Department of Public Health, Office of Emergency Services, the appropriate regional EMS council, and C, the service zone in which it operates or in which it is a designated provider, and prior to the existence of service zones, the appropriate local jurisdictions. 2, changes in 105 CMR 17247A, that's the cessation of service section, must be provided at least 90 calendar days prior to the effective date of the change or as soon as the service is aware of the need for the termination of change. Now, there is an argument to be said that the Board of Directors of Adams Ambulance, by publishing the newspaper article and other conversations, was that notice. However, at no time was notice given that on a particular date, we are no longer going to roll a paramedic unit to a medical call. 90 days from December the 31st is not November the 17th. We have received barely enough time to put a transition plan together in order for continuity of services. I think that's important that people understand that context and to why this board is meeting tonight with the item it has in front of it. Thirdly, notice of changes in 105 CMR 17247A must be provided as soon as the service is aware of the need for the change. Well, all of a sudden, on November the 17th, that notice was given, telling this community that there is a problem. That is a red flag. 4, a notice of changes in service delivery shall be accompanied by a plan to prevent a disruption in EMS service subject to the approval of the department. And that is essentially the citation that Adams Ambulance Service is under. Yet, at no point in time last Monday was it discussed by Adams Ambulance Service. We knew about it and chose not to say anything because it is not the intent of this board, it's not the intent of the town administrator, town of Adams or town of Cheshire to embarrass an organization in any way, shape, or form. But we are now forced, I am now forced, in order to have this conversation, and it is unpleasant. But it is imperative that the public understand why we have to have this conversation tonight. It is a legal conversation. In discussions with the Department of Public Health regarding this change of service order, Adams Ambulance Service cannot simply, by coming into this meeting tonight or by sending a letter saying we wish to rescind ourselves. The Department of Public Health must review it. They must respond by December the 20th to have a conversation about how Adams Ambulance Service will continue to provide service to the town. And the issue that we have as town staff and as public safety issues, and I've talked with all of them, Chief Kelly is here, and other public safety officials within this town, we cannot continue to go on under uncertain conditions. And that is what is being asked of the town, that we continue not knowing whether or not Adams Ambulance Service will be able to continue. Now, I want to make a very clear distinction here. A decision by the town of Cheshire, which for those who may not know, already voted on this Tuesday night. The same agenda item was available to the 3 boards last Monday night. But I believe, and Ms. Hoyt can confer whether or not this is true, we don't have to take it from me, A decision was made out of respect to the employees because we felt it would be disrespectful at that time to continue that conversation because you were making an effort at that time, and we wanted to recognize that. And we were hopeful that over the past week, almost 2 weeks now, that somebody would come forward from Adams Ambulance Service in a managerial capacity and explain that letter. An email does not suffice to simply say, oh, we've changed our minds. How? Why? Nothing has changed. You still have problems with payroll. You still have problems having crews, just like any other EMS provider. None of that has changed. We cannot continue to go forward under these conditions. And furthermore, it is our understanding that when the Department of Public Health looks at this, they're going to look at it fully. So the Department of Public Health is not ordering the town of Adams what to do at all, but it's important that we understand that is the context of what we're working in. So as of November the 27th, Adams Ambulance Service has requested notification to restore service. They're under a violation of 105 CMR 170. The Department of Public Health says we cannot move forward assuming that Adams Ambulance Service will be allowed to continue to provide coverage to the town. That is the context that we are in. So with that being said, any decision made by the board tonight does not close Adams Ambulance Service. It does not change their corporate structure. It does not change how they operate. It changes nothing except item 4 on our agenda allows the town of Adams to move forward with a primary EMS provider that our EMS calls that come in through 911 or non-emergency need go to Northern Berkshire EMS first. That is what is being asked tonight of the board, effective January the 1st, 2024. Why? Because Adams Ambulance Service has indicated that as of 12/31, they are no longer able to provide service. And despite the second letter that says they are now able to, they have not provided sufficient detail to satisfy 105 CMR 170 that that is the case, or frankly, anybody here with common sense. And I hate to have to be that frank and colloquial about it, but it's true. We are talking again about public health and public safety, that when we call 911, we don't care what color stripe is on the ambulance, we don't care what uniform it has, it's whether or not it responds in a reasonable time. And the nonsense that is being spread about 20-minute response times is ridiculous, and Chief Meany will have the opportunity tonight, or Deputy Chief O'Neill, or Deputy Chief Tobin, whoever wants to step up and talk about it, can again speak about what the anticipated response time is. And I want to be clear that Adams Ambulance Service is an independent entity. It has the full capability, independent of tonight's vote, to continue in operation, continue to serve whatever communities it wishes to serve, continue as long as it maintains its license with the Department of Public Health to respond to mutual aid calls, and can get its house in order, and maybe someday be able to adequately come in front of this board and say, we are ready to adequately and professionally serve the people of the town of Adams. And right now, it is my opinion, it is not. And it is not the opinion of the Chief of Police, the Fire District Chief, the Forest Warden's Chief, Berkshire Health Systems, the Berkshire Sheriff's Department. And I don't want to speak for those entities, you need to ask them for yourself. But no one in this room has sat here in an echo chamber, and I certainly haven't. I reached out to as many public agencies as I can and gotten feedback. And that's the guidance and the feedback that I've been provided. And it's my responsibility to provide it to this board, and we'll do so this evening as I have. So that's what's being asked. And I think it's important for the employees to understand that a decision tonight is of no vote against you, it is no vote for you. It is a vote to ensure that the corporate entity that provides EMS coverage can do so. Northern Berkshire EMS can, right now. It is fully aware of those limitations. This board is fully aware of those limitations. I am fully aware, and the public safety apparatus of the town of Adams is fully aware of it. We've worked out the dispatch issues. I'm sorry, Christine, I'm going into item 3, so I'll pause and go into the continuity plan. But that's what's being asked. Is there an opportunity at some point for Adams Ambulance Service to be able to come back and say, hey, we fixed all this, we're good to go? Yes, there is. But that isn't just the town of Adams. The town of Adams isn't the evil party here. The responsible party is the Board of Directors of Adams Ambulance Service, its general manager, and the regulation is the Department of Public Health. The Department of Public Health will eventually tell the town of Adams whether or not it's able to use Adams Ambulance Service if it so wishes. And I think it's important that people understand that. That's the update. In my opinion, nothing has changed with Adams Ambulance Service, unfortunately. I think it's obvious that people are trying, but I don't know to what extent that would satisfy the Board of Selectmen as its responsibility to provide adequate EMS service. Sorry for being verbose.
Never known you to be short on words. Okay. The other item, following the public meeting last Monday, when the employees did mention that they would be looking to rescind the order, we did contact the Office of Emergency Medical Services, who also indicated that the renewal for the license for Adams Ambulance would also be coming up in early spring, because it does expire in April, and that is a process that would have to begin in January. And given the uncertainty of things, that might be a difficult process for the renewal. And so I do want to just share that that was also information that was provided last week, at the same time that the official order to correct deficiencies was provided to the towns of Cheshire and Adams. That's all I have to add to this. Obviously, I would like it to open up to the board if they have any questions about the current status, anything that Jay has mentioned so far before we go into the EMS continuity plan. If there's anything, go ahead, Al.
I would just like to say a few things. First of all, I'm very cognitive of what's going on, and the problem I see, and I want to thank Jay for what he just brought out during his talk, but the captain of your ship hasn't been around, and that bothers me a lot, because anybody who's confident in their staff or the people that are working for them would be at your side. And I haven't seen this gentleman. I don't even know who he is. And it doesn't exude confidence to me. And I look out there, and I know a lot of you who serve on the ambulance service. You're great people. You care a lot about the community. And speaking for myself, and it's been mentioned, it's nothing against you whatsoever. Nothing at all. You are great servants of the community. But the problem is that the board in your meetings, why didn't this come up earlier in discussions? Why was the time frame so elusive, and then all of a sudden it's in a panic mode? And that bothers me also, because any organization has a board of directors, which you do have. And the board of directors are the people, perhaps you have a treasurer. Do you have a treasurer within the ranks of your board of directors?
Yes.
Now, has your treasurer ever came forward and spoke to you early on in this process when you saw the wheels were beginning to fall off? And, okay, I'm seeing some heads nod. Well, then, what did you do initially to try to change that? And, I mean, the timetable is, it's been laid out perfectly. I mean, this goes back for quite some time. And I fear, when I look at your plan, I know it's in the goodness of your heart that you want to do it. I believe strongly that you have the will to want to do it. But do you have the ability to do it? Everything that I've read and that I've heard is just conjecture. I mean, you're going to sell the building. Okay, fine. Are you going to get a long-term contract from the buyer that you're going to be able to use that building for a certain amount of time? Or the person that buys it, is he going to say, boy, I've got a nice piece of real estate here, and, say, well, I can't accommodate you anymore. I mean, I'm just making this up because I know little about the way that this is supposed to progress on the part of the Adams Ambulance Service to make you a viable EMS service for our community. This is a matter of life and death. And that's the way I'm looking at it. And I don't see right now that what you're bringing forward to us is going to meet the criteria I need to know to make sure the residents of Adams, Cheshire, Savoy are going to be safe if there's a medical emergency or any other emergency. So I have other things to say, but I'm going to just stop there.
Thanks, Joe. Any?
Yeah, I read through this, we were just handed before the meeting. a lot of it sounds great, some I don't agree with. I mean, to sell the building, I don't personally think it's a good, sound business plan to get rid of your assets. But all these steps should have taken place at least 3 years ago. I just have a lot of problems with it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It is the responsibility of this board to look out for the best interest of the town, people of the town of Adams and the town of Adams. We set the policy based on the information presented to us. When we asked for the information we need to make a good decision regarding our relationship with Adams Ambulance, it was as if an ambulance goes to the hospital and a doctor says to the incoming ambulance, what's the patient's vitals? We don't know. What's their blood pressure? We don't know. Well, that's exactly the response we got when we were trying to find out the vitality of Adams Ambulance. And so I want to applaud Jay and the public safety people and Christine for doing the work necessary to ensure that there is a viable plan in place to ensure coverage no matter what the conditions. And so I just find it, there's no way that I could, as a selectman of this town, enter into a long-term agreement with an organization who doesn't even know what its own vitals are. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks. With that, do you want to move to the?
I can, thank you. Before I get into EMS continuity, there's one more point that I want to make, because I'm not sure, this has been such a consuming topic in a variety of different venues over the last month or so that I don't even remember where I've made certain points. So if I repeat this, forgive me, but I think it's important that people understand. When you engage municipal government, particularly when you ask for taxpayer investment, that triggers, and John Duquette sitting here is a private individual, I know he and I have had this conversation, he's going to smile so he knows what I'm going to say. When you tangle with municipal government and you ask for taxpayer involvement, with it comes a whole bunch of bureaucracy. Things start to move slow, they don't move fast, and that is of no fault of anyone sitting here. But it is local government, whether as much as we want to or not, is a monolith. And it moves like a jar of molasses on the coldest day in January as possible. Whether or not it was intentional, the towns of Adams, Cheshire, and Savoy, and I keep saying that because there's a lot of focus on Adams, and it's not. It's the towns of Adams, Cheshire, and Savoy, and frankly, Holly, because this isn't just about Adams, was put into a corner at the worst possible time and asked for the worst possible thing it could. That is public taxpayer subsidy. The town of Adams, as in any other municipality in Massachusetts, is regulated by a law that's called Proposition 2.5. It stands for 2.5%. It means year over year that a local municipality cannot grow its budget more than 2.5% over the previous year. So that means that when an entity comes forward or a need is identified or anything, it cannot just be haphazardly added to the town budget, because we could end up exceeding exactly how much we have, and that available to add to the budget, and that means we have to ask for what's called a Proposition 2.5 override. When Adams Ambulance Service asks for a subsidy, it has to be thought through, it has to be studied, metrics and data has to be provided. And it can't be done with the town of Adams stuck into a corner with 911 calls ringing off the hook with no ambulance provided, waiting for the town to hand a blank check. And when we asked the general manager and the board of directors for information, we were hoping that we would have that in order to have a professional conversation at the appropriate time with the appropriate town boards and commissions in order to do that. So I think it's just important for the employees to know that it's not as easy as just saying, how much do you need? Here you go. There's a process with that, because if we can't fit it into the budget, we now have to have a whole separate conversation, including with Chief Kelly, about whether or not we need as many police officers as we need, whether we need to continue to funding the school that we need to fund, whether or not we need to continue to have the amount of staff that we have or spend the amount of money in DPW and asphalt that we have. Those are the conversations that could have to happen. Or we have to be able to say, providing EMS service to the town, we have no other viable option except investing in EMS service. And in that case, we have to get this board has to get all of its ducks in order and go ask the 150-member body, town meeting body, to ask for a Proposition 2.5 override, which means the public has to accept being taxed greater in any given year than which Massachusetts law allows. So, and I know that may sound like a lot of mumbo jumbo, and unfortunately it's the world that we live in, but that is why it is not just as easy to say, oh my God, Adams Ambulance Service, this is terrible, here, have a blank check, walk away with taxpayer dollars. If I did that as town manager, not that I have the authority to do it on my own, this board, the finance committee, some members of which are in this room, and town meeting members, some of which are in this room, would look at me and say, what the hell is wrong with you? So we have to do our due diligence, not just in terms of making sure that when 911 is dialed, an ambulance licensed and qualified rolls up, but we do so in a cost-effective manner as well for the taxpayer. Because running local government is not cheap. It is very expensive as well. And I just wanted to make that one point so you understand that that process is not easy. And we were put into a corner and almost bullied into having to give money to a private entity that we have no management control over at all. And that is not sound fiscal management for a local government. Doesn't mean it can't happen, doesn't mean it's not legal. It just means that this time, when we're talking about public health and safety, is not the time to have that. So with that being said, the town was forced into a conversation to talk about EMS continuity. Now, that's exactly what the CMR talks about. It talks about when an EMS provider is not able, doesn't think it's going to be able to provide, it has a duty. Whether that duty is under law or whether that duty is with code or with oath, that it sit down and say, we don't think we're going to be able to do this. That was the plan that we wanted to have just 2 weeks ago, and it didn't happen. The only entity that showed up to the table, sorry to point to you guys, is Northern Berkshire EMS, to have that conversation and saying, how can we help? And because they have been paying attention to the overarching, as the employees of Adams Ambulance have, over the overarching entire aspect of EMS, they've known that this is a possibility. So we have that continuity plan in place. The continuity plan, we've talked about it before, we've talked about it a little bit, I believe, last Monday, but the plan is Northern Berkshire EMS will take over primary service EMS coverage for the town of Adams. They are now designated as the primary EMS provider for the town of Cheshire. Town manager in Cheshire called me up Wednesday morning and informed me that their board of selectmen voted to do so. They intend to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Northern Berkshire EMS to provide primary coverage. It is the intent, well, I should say, it is the function of item 4 in order to have that debate tonight, whether or not that is what Adams wishes to do. That item is potential vote to transition to Northern Berkshire EMS as primary EMS provider in order to ensure continuity of services effective January 1, 2024. Item number 4 flows from item number 3, which is update on EMS continuity plan. And I'm just going to give a brief overview, and I think it might be important for the board to allow any questions to be asked of Northern Berkshire EMS as to the details. Chief Meany and his staff are far more capable of doing that than I am. But the continuity plan is such that effective January 1, Northern Berkshire EMS would take over primary coverage. The dispatching issue, the fractured radio aspects that we have here in Northern Berkshire, which is a greater issue than what anybody here can address, has been resolved.
I'm sorry, excuse me?
I was just going to say, I know there's communication problems. I'm a flight nurse.
Okay.
And I know there's.
We're going to address that. Thank you.
So the issue is resolved. Berkshire County Sheriff's Department will dispatch Northern Berkshire EMS on their own frequency. The issue being resolved is whether or not it's a 1-button or 2-button transfer. And if you're a dispatcher, and I once was, it saves a couple of steps in dealing with the radio console. And when you have a telephone ringing, monitor in front of you, and other issues going on in open calls, that means a few seconds. So that issue has been effectively resolved for now. Is that a permanent solution? Who knows? But it's effective enough to dispatch Northern Berkshire EMS without any unreasonable delay. No different than the way that Adams Ambulance is dispatched now. That was probably one of the bigger issues. Also, I want to be very clear, because I think it's been danced around a little bit, but Northern Berkshire EMS will be based in the town of Adams. It will be garaged in the town of Adams, not on Columbia Street, not with Adams Ambulance Service. They can continue to operate, no different than they do now. They will simply not be the primary provider for EMS coverage. So I'll let Chief Meany go into a little bit more detail about that, but they will be based in Adams. Will they always be based there? Not necessarily. It's the Forest Warden Station. But again, that is the temporary garaging location. That garaging location has to be inspected by the Department of Public Health for a variety of different reasons, security issues of which will not be discussed, but if John wishes to, he can. But it had to be inspected by the Department of Public Health. That passed inspection. So we are ready to go. In fact, we are ready to go to the point where if Adams Ambulance Service, and this is still frankly in my eyes a threat, that tomorrow they call up and say, we can't make payroll, our staff didn't show up, we can't have people work for us, who's going to answer the phone? Northern Berkshire is ready to go on this. Cheshire is accepting that as well. So also, the Department of Public Health has been involved with this continuity plan, with the transition plan, and they have affirmed to the towns of Adams, Cheshire, and Savoy that the plan is solid and sound. So that is the update on EMS continuity. Now, that plan was put together by members of our public safety team in conjunction with Cheshire, in conjunction with Northern Berkshire EMS. And that's how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to have the EMS provider at the table with the community to talk about these issues. And as I said to Josh when we spoke that night, and as I've said at other times, the first time, and as Joe said, I've met the general manager, was when there was a hand sticking out saying, we need money. And that's just not right. And frankly, Mike Gleason and I, although I knew Mike, I frankly ended up knowing Mike because of COVID, but there wasn't much of a relationship even before Mr. Sanderson took over either. And that's just not the way that it's supposed to work, for one way or another. So the continuity plan tonight for the Board of Selectmen to understand and for the public is in place. That's been in place now for a week. Chief Meany, if the board wishes to recognize him, can probably talk a little bit more. Chief Kelly is here as well, should you need any input from the police department. Mr. Shepley, representing Regional Emergency Management, contributed to that conversation. Mr. Shepley is here tonight as well to discuss any particular details that you have.
Certainly. So, Chief Meany, if you wouldn't mind coming forward, I know I invited you this evening to talk to our board a little bit about the continuity plan. I know that if you wanted to talk a little bit about the Forest Warden's Garage, how that would meet your needs, and if you could also talk about, I know there's a lot of concern about response time, and if maybe you can talk about your current mutual aid agreement, your response times through that, and what you think your response times could be with a operation in the town of Adams. And then I'll let you start with that, and then I guess and whatever else you want to add, and then the board can ask questions.
Thank you for having us tonight. I would just add that, when this announcement or the news hit of this situation, we were just as concerned as everybody else in this room, and we knew that it was going to affect us one way or another. Just so everybody's aware, we have mutual aid agreements with communities. We have to, by regulation, have mutual aid agreements. And those mutual aid agreements are basically that we will respond when Adams Ambulance or Pownell Rescue or Waynesboro is not able to respond. So we share those agreements. We have agreements with Adams. We have agreements with a whole bunch of services in the area. So we would be bound to respond if they say they close tomorrow. We would be bound and would have to respond anyway. We thought it was prudent that we reached out to Adams and just say, what are you currently thinking? What is the plan? Because if this happened tomorrow, we would be responding either way. We would rather be proactive than reactive. We wanted to make sure we had a plan in place. And that's really our angle and our standpoint from this, was to just make sure that the residents of Adams were going to be serviced in a reasonable manner so that, like you said, it's a life and death situation. We did get approval for the location on One Warden Drive, the Forest Warden building. DPH was pleased with that location. It has all the necessary functions that we would need to be operational out of that location. It'll allow us to put one ambulance in the community. And I know the question will be, well, Adams has 3 ambulances, and they do. We have 8 ambulances in our fleet currently. We usually staff 4 to 5 ambulances per day currently. The plan would be to locate the ambulance in Adams, to cut down the response time. We have the ability during daytime hours and even into the early evening hours to have staffing influx and put 2 additional trucks on the road during peak times. And we achieve that by having administrative staff. So somebody like myself or my deputy chiefs, we also have our administrative assistant, who we're all certified, and we're all able to jump in. Similar to what Adams does, they have office staff that would do the same on busy days. The problem is you can't always plan for the busy days. So to be staffed at full staffing 24/7, 365 is not cost effective, it's not fiscally responsible. So you have to have those plans in place to be able to do that. And that's what we're currently going to do. The current plan is when that one ambulance goes out, we have a regional EMS system. That was when Village Ambulance merged with Northern Berkshire, or with North Adams Ambulance, we created a regional service. And we constantly are moving our assets, our regional assets, and we use system status management to move trucks around as we need during the day. We may float trucks to Whamstown if call volume continues to pick up on Whamstown. We may float trucks to Adams if that's the case. The other thing is, you have the Route 8 that runs right through your community. Our ambulances take Route 8 all day long, and we know this. Adams knows this. So if anybody's covered in the town, in Berkshire County, Adams is pretty well covered, because our trucks are going, and Adams ambulance trucks are going up and down Route 8 corridor all the way to Berkshire Medical Center all day long. So we do feel that we have a plan in place. We've been very vocal about hiring. This is no secret. Every EMS agency across the nation is struggling with recruitment and retention. We are staffed very well at this point for our organization. We've worked very hard at that. We're proud of that, and we have a great team, and we want to expand that. We currently, I know there's a lot of information out there. There currently has been no application submitted for employment from any of the Adams Ambulance employees. We do have some other ideas in place, and we've been speaking about that over the last week. We have 2 EMT classes that are currently scheduled to occur, one in January, and then we're going to do another class in February. We have 6 people that have already expressed interest in EMT training, so we're looking to do that. Because ultimately, we want to make this work well long-term, we've got to increase the staffing. But in the immediate future, are you going to have an ambulance responding to 911 calls? You will. Okay? In terms of response times, our overall response time for our organization, and I'm talking about the 10 communities that we currently service, our average response time is 7 minutes and 37 seconds. That's taking into account our furthest points that we respond to. So that's including Rowe and Monroe and Stanford, Reedsboro, Vermont, okay? Just over the last month, responding to mutual aid calls here in Adams, we've had a 7-minute, 58-second response time. So that happened 15 times this month. And our response time from North Adams was 7 minutes, 58 seconds. So having an ambulance here in Adams, that's going to cut that time down significantly. So I don't know if I answered all the questions that you had, or if there's any other questions, but that's...
Those were mine, so
Yeah.
I'll open up to the board,
Sure.
because for some of them, this might be the first time they're talking with you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, I was wondering, as a EMS service, you seem to, over the years, you seem to stay well above the sinking line. In other words, how have you done it? How have you managed to keep your EMS service so profitable and the ability to give good service?
Yeah, so it's a juggle. We all have and I just want to say this, all EMS organizations across the nation feel the pinch. I'm certainly in favor of different funding sources. I'm an advocate for all of the things nationally that are happening with EMS funding, but you have to work within your means and what you're able to provide. We have our company in a whole has 2 divisions. We have an EMS division. We also have a chair van transport division, which also generates revenue. So we have 2 divisions that generate, different streams of revenue, which is helpful. We also have fundraising through our annual fund drive, just like Adams Ambulance. We also have several private foundations that give certain dollar amounts to our organization for whether it's specific programming or just general operating funds. Okay. And we have our education and training, which generates revenue, along with a very robust grant program. You know, we've been very successful. Just in the end of 2022 to 23, we've received over $750,000 in grant funding from different sources. So we have, you know, Amalio Giustino's our grant writer. He's also the EMD here in the town of Adams, and you know, he's over the years has been very successful for us, and that's been pretty steady throughout my tenure at the organization. We've been very successful with grants. Down the road, long term, we have to look and see. You know, coming to any, and you alluded to this, Jay, coming to a municipality asking for money in crisis mode is never the way to do that. And you really have to find out what your need is, and to have, you know, not a solid number and throwing out arbitrary figures is not the way it needs to happen. It just needs to be well thought out. Data and all that stuff needs to come with it. So that's currently how we do it, and that's how we've been successful.
Okay, and another question, should the vote go where we're going to turn over the responsibilities of public safety to your group? I was just wondering, I don't know really how I want to state it, but what, you're saying that you're going to have one ambulance, right? And it's been okay to put that ambulance
Yes.
there, okay?
Yes.
So suppose there's, you know, a major, you know, crash where, you know, 5, 6 people, you know, need service. How quickly could you get another vehicle there?
Well, if upon dispatch, if we know that it's, say, we'll just use a car accident, for instance, and it
Yeah.
comes in with multiple injuries, that initial unit would respond out of the Adams station, and then we would start rolling another unit from the North Adams station. So our average response time from North Adams has been 7 minutes, 58 seconds. We would definitely get a jump on that if we heard that, and we would send another unit to have that second unit or third unit or whatever it is available. So our goal would be to put more, as staffing improves, our goal would be to put more staffed units in the town of Adams. It's a busy organization. I mean, we know that. We work together well. We work daily together. We know what the call volume is. We know we share transfer data. We know what everybody's doing. We do that on a daily basis now. So we would just have to, we would have to do that. And we do that similarly with Whamstown now. We have one unit staffed in Whamstown, and as call volume increases, we start rolling trucks into Whamstown. That's what we do.
And lastly, and I'd have maybe a few more questions, but I'd like others to ask. So should we go with your service financially? What are we looking at as a community down the road or anytime? I mean, like financially, what our obligations will be?
We have not, I'll be honest with you, our board, we put together a committee back in 2019 exploring municipal funding. At that time, we were trying to get ahead of things, but we decided that right now is not our time to do this. If we were to do that down the road, it would be a long thought-out plan. You'd have plenty of notification. You'd be involved in the process. But I'm not prepared tonight to say that we would need X dollars, 4 years from now or 3 years from now. I don't have that. Because I will say this, there's a lot of things happening in the EMS landscape in terms of reimbursement, both at the, when I say local level, state level stuff happening, along with national initiatives that are happening, well above our pay grades. But there is a lot of good work happening, and there are going to be changes that come down the pike that are going to help organizations to become more solvent. And that's, I know that doesn't help the situation right now, but they're working towards that. And I will just say this, shame on the, our Congress and shame on the state leaders that, this wasn't thought about years ago. There's currently a cost collection going on a national level. We all have to provide data into to the government right now, everybody's been selected for the next 5 years. So if you look at this 5 years out, there's not going to be any changes to CMS, meaning Medicare, probably for another 5 years. We get minimal increases from Medicare, but there are larger initiatives. It's just going to take some time, and yeah, municipal funding's not out of the question for organizations. Like, that needs to be part, I think that needs to be always part of the conversation. But how much is that? That's what you really need to figure out, so.
Okay, that's all I have right now.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Not right now, just the board can at this moment. I'll come back.
I've got
Oh.
important questions that I'd like to
Okay,
ask.
thank you. Hold on. The rest of the board. Okay. Howard, you have anything?
Yes, it's well known, as you described, that reimbursement rates have been dropping. First of all, what is your total annual budget?
Up $5 million.
5 million?
Yeah.
Okay, and what percentage of that is covered by reimbursements?
Oh, about 80% of our budget. Yeah.
Okay, and has that number been, how much has that been decreasing over time? Years ago, what was it?
Well, it decreases in terms of what's happened with us is our call volume's been increasing. So our revenue has been increasing year after year, to the point that it is today.
A different way. What percentage of your budget now has to be grants and non-direct revenue? Cover the shortfall,
Yeah, so I would say 20%, roughly.
20%.
Yeah. Yep.
And finally, what is the position of your board? What conversations have you had with your board, and what is the board's position on this extension of your service to Adams?
They've been very supportive of it. Our president was at the joint meeting in Cheshire, and they've been very supportive and have been up to date and involved in this process throughout the entire time. We have a 13-member board. We meet monthly, made up of a lot of local businessmen, well-known businessmen. We have a couple doctors on the board, RN. We also have legal counsel on the board.
Okay, and finally, what should Adams, the town of Adams, be aware of as we enter into this agreement? Because it's going to be a different organization, different, what do we need?
I think just know that, we plan to try to increase this relationship in terms of staffing. So I think there's going to be a lot of hesitation, or there seems to be a lot of hesitation with just, the one ambulance in the community. Just know that we would certainly try to expand that as quickly as we can, as soon as staffing supports that. There's always a need for additional units. I'm not going to argue that point. Like, we know that ambulances, we need them. There's transfers to be taken. There's, mutual aid calls to be taken. So I would just say that's our hope. That's our goal. That's what we're going to work towards.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So that brings us to item number 4. If the board wanted to deliberate or talk about transitioning to Northern Berkshire EMS as our primary EMS provider, in order to ensure continuity of service, effective January 1st, 2024, given the information that we've been provided, that Adams Ambulance was looking to close December 31st of 2023. As part of that discussion, I also just wanted to state, which is hard, it's on November 17th, we were told that Adams Ambulance was not going to be able to make payroll the week of the 20th. And that there probably would not be ambulances rolling for Thanksgiving in the town of Adams. It was you, Fred, looking for funding, and that you weren't going to make payroll unless a private funder gave you a check for $25,000.
Open meeting with tracks that out.
It was not at an open meeting.
Okay.
Nor did it require to
It
be
didn't
one.
require to be. I'm now notifying the rest of my board what I was told on the 17th. And then on the 20th, I want to thank Northern Berkshire EMS. I want to thank our forest wardens. I want to thank DPH and OEMS for scrambling to come together to inspect the building in Adams and inspect the building in Cheshire, because our fear was we would not have ambulances in the towns of Adams, Cheshire, and Savoy for Thanksgiving, based on the information we were given on the 17th that payroll was not going to be made. On the 20th at the public meeting was the first time we were told that, yeah, we can make payroll this week. We're now chasing all of this outstanding billing of $800,000 that's sitting out there. This is the first time we saw that number. It's the first time we were told that. And the employees were, this was the first time that they were told, like, all of the things that had been going on for months prior. And that they wanted to rescind that order because they now had money to pay payroll, and they now had money that they could chase after, and they could keep their doors open. It is frightening. It is frightening for public officials who want to maintain the safety of their residents. This roller coaster, this yo-yo, all of it, quite honestly, has made me ill for weeks. And I have been grateful to the folks, to the employees from Adams Ambulance who still roll to this day when they're called out on a call. I am grateful to all of the public safety folks who are coming together and trying to work on a continuity plan. And I am grateful for our state agencies who have scrambled to make sure that if something should happen, and the doors closed to Adams Ambulance before December 31st, our communities would be covered and we would have a shorter response time. I wanted to just share that because that's new information that I wasn't able to share at the public meeting last Monday. I also wanted to just point out, you know, I appreciate that the employees put together this plan.
It's the only plan we've ever seen in writing.
I was going to just say, at 4:56 PM, an employee of Adams Ambulance brought forward a written plan to our board. It is the first time we've seen it. We still don't see financial information on here. We still don't see what a proposal would look like for a subsidy for the town of Adams. We have yet to actually receive a proposal or an official request from Adams Ambulance as to what that dollar amount would be to help them close the financial gap that they are in. I went to the membership meeting on Tuesday. I am a member. I have donated to Adams Ambulance year after year. I didn't get financial information at that meeting. Your general manager didn't share any of that information at that meeting. There were no financials. There was no plan. This plan that you wrote, he didn't communicate any of that to the membership when we were sitting in the room. I applaud all of you for doing the work that your leadership should have been doing on your behalf. And it's, I just want you to know, I think of your faces. I think of all of you. Josh has been a fantastic spokesperson for all of you. Once it was brought to light and you were all brought into the conversation, this is not a reflection of your work. I want you to know that. That my feelings about moving forward with Northern Berkshire EMS for January 1st is not a reflection of the employees of Adams Ambulance. I thank you for everything that you have done to this point. But at the same time, my personal feeling is that I need to ensure that there is an organization that has sustainability and will be open and will communicate and be able to serve our communities as they have been and will continue to do. So that's kind of a little bit of what I wanted to say before. And the board, we can deliberate and any other comments. Yeah.
I was just gonna,
Do you want to hear from anybody in the public?
I think
up
it's
to you.
fair that
Okay.
they should, yeah.
Sure. Fred, did you want to speak on behalf of Adams Ambulance as the president of their board? I will give you the floor first.
I've got a few things I want to say. It's just not a great day for me.
So if you could state your name and your
Fred
position.
Ballender, I'm the newly formed president of the Adams Ambulance Association. We had problems previously. We came to this board here, Jay, Chris, and we asked for some help. We asked for help 2 years ago. We knew we were in financial problems. We knew we were having problems. We bought 2 ambulances, brand-new ambulances. We paid cash for them. We probably should not have paid cash for them. We probably should have went to the bank. That's a mistake that the management made, and it just happened, that's all. Then came along COVID, and that kind of kicked our butts quite a bit. There was more to do. We didn't get paid for an awful lot of stuff that we did. Did you know that last year we did 507 calls and we didn't get paid for any of them? 507 calls. I fall and I can't get up. So you go and you help the people get up and you sit them in the chair, do whatever you're gonna do, and then you drive home, but we didn't transport them. So without transport, how can you get any money? This is where the money comes from, in transports. 507, 380 this year, okay? That's 800 calls that we've done. This is one of the reasons why we asked for municipal assistance. Who's going to pay for this? We can't absorb it. We've got enough problems now. We had finance, and we've got payroll to make, and tires to put on the trucks and fuel and so forth. Who's going to pay for those 800 people that we helped? The municipalities should pay for them. Who else is going to? They didn't have insurance. Where else are you going to get the money? Okay, and that hurt us quite a bit. We had a chance just recently. We have a chance to sell our building. Our building is worth over $400,000 according to the town records, and we actually owe $80,000 to the bank. All right, so it gives us $300-something thousand in equity. The equity does us absolutely no good. What good is equity if you can't use it? So we decided to sell the building, and it's taken time. It's taken a lot of time, but you've got to get appraisals but it's working. It's working out. By selling the building, it's going to give us enough money to pay every bill that we've got, to pay everybody out. We already own the ambulances, all right? So it gives us a great start. We'll have $100,000, maybe a few $100,000, to work with again on a flat budget. So I don't see the hurry to put it in. Listen, Northern Berkshire is a great outfit. We get along well with them. They work with us, we work with them. Okay, we get along well with them. But right now, and I'm going to tell you, I've been in this thing a long time. The best scenario, the very best scenario, is to have Adams Ambulance functioning properly, paying our bills, getting our calls in, Northern Berkshire functioning properly, doing mutual aid. We know our people, they know their people, we know our geography, they know their geography. And to just take and wipe out a business that's been here for 50 years, 52 years, just wipe it right out like it was never there, I think it's almost cruel. And I kind of wonder why, and I'm not sure what the reason is, why the townspeople don't get a chance to vote on this rather than have it's just a select person's vote. I'm just curious over that. And, you know, we welcome, you know, at our board meetings now, we welcome advisory board members to come in. We welcome that. Come in, look at what we're doing, look at what we're doing. We've got another month to go before December 31st, which is, I believe, your cutoff date. We had to change, we had to change our ways. We didn't have any choice. We were gonna close. You know, financially, we weren't gonna make it. But with the sale of the building, our bills all paid, my goodness sakes, there's no way that we would not make it. As far as municipal help, yeah, someday along the way, it's coming. Southern Berkshire is $350,000 in the hole. This is a widespread thing. Free ambulance service it's over, it's done. We've got to, somebody has to pay for it. And I don't know where. We also have insurance companies that owe us over $800,000. $800,000. We're digging into getting a different carrier to be more, you know, to be more aggressive to collect some of that money. But $800,000, even if we were allowed 50% of that, $400,000 would look awfully nice in our coffers right now. So, you know, when I sat there and I listened to Jay and everybody talk about what we were doing, you know, it's like you turned us into a bunch of flunkies. And I'll tell you what, those are the best people in the world right there. They're honest and they're dedicated. You don't find the dedication that these people, this is why we had to change our attitude, because they were so involved, and they kept saying, what can we do? How can we do this? How can we fix this? And we found a way to fix it. But with you people voting against us, against Adams Ambulance, then it's not going to be fixed. It's not going to be the way it should be. So I don't have much else to say. I probably went too far anyhow, but.
I have a question for Fred, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fred, since 2020, particularly with COVID, there was a lot of grant opportunities available for paramedic companies,
Right.
EMS companies. Over the last 3 to 4 years, how much money has Adams Ambulance brought in for grants?
We didn't. We had management problems.
Okay.
All right, we had management problems. All right.
Over the last 3 or 4 years, how much grant money has Northern Berkshire EMS brought in?
Well, they had AJ. AJ he's great at it. We've got a person in now he's going to grant writing school right now.
Did you ever ask AJ to write a grant for Adams Ambulance?
No, well, he's been pretty busy, you know, but.
Was there an opportunity in March of 2022, made by myself, to allow the mechanics paid for by the town of Adams to provide mechanical repair to Adams Ambulance fleet? Do you recall that?
We have this, I have all of this right in here. I should have read this off, but I just freelanced it. And, you know.
I think the one point that I just want to remind everybody is, a vote tonight does not change the corporate structure or the financial model of Adams Ambulance Service.
It has changed.
It is perfectly capable of maintaining operation, adjusting its own house, adjusting its leadership, and continue to operate. But I think it remains very clear that it's not capable of being a reliable operation. And that, at the end, Fred, is what we're here to talk about. And I take exception, as the town administrator,
52 years of
the way-
reliable operation.
and there was an opportunity presented to celebrate that, to celebrate what Adams Ambulance has brought on. And frankly, the Board of Directors, and I've told you this before, the Board of Directors of Adams Ambulance Service is the one that has put us, the employees, and the community at large into this position. Not the town of Adams, however that's defined.
We've
not
changed the Board of Directors.
And not the town administrator.
We've changed the Board of Directors. Our president had to resign because he wasn't feeling well. He started to have heart problems, okay, which put me into this position, which is a position I didn't really want. We lost another, the Savoy Fire Chief was afraid that nobody was going to talk to him anymore, so he so he quit so we have two more board members, okay? We've changed our management, we've changed managers. The manager that we had has put in his letter of resignation, and so we've got, I've got two people right there that are taking over management right now, and don't laugh at them. They're not. There's nothing to laugh
No,
at.
Josh is smiling and waving.
He was smiling and waving. When did that resignation happen? I mean, you just had a membership meeting on Tuesday night, and your general manager was announced as Sean Sanderson.
It happened yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to say, Fred, I've known you for a long, long time, and you're the salt of the earth, people like yourself. And once again, I want to really make this point strong, that has been mentioned by all the members here. There is no animosity or no disdain against any of the employees. They're all great, and I'll say that over and over again. But the plan that's being presented now is just, in my opinion, a pipe dream. What you want to happen, but will it happen? Can it happen? In the amount of time to make us change my mind, it hasn't changed my mind, because this is all speculative. What you want to do, I mean, if that fell right in place like dominoes, you'd be great, but there's just so much that needs to be done before you can even, there's a lot of things here.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, right, but, I mean, how long would it take you to just switch bill companies or apply for grants or, that type of thing, Fred? There's got to be...
Grants are a different story. I don't know. We'd have to wait for,
Right. And once again, it's been brought up before that your ambulance service, if you can get things together, you're a private entity. You can, if you feel you can do this and get up and running again, then, it's up to your new group, which I will call, because the previous people that were leading you weren't leaders. They were just going about their own. And I would have been able, I've been on many boards, and I can tell right off if somebody's doing their job and they're working hard at it. And I think that your members, you're all educated people, you must have been able to foresee that things weren't going right.
We saw that, and that's why we asked for help. And we ran into a brick wall. When we came here in September, we met with Jay and Mr. Hoyt, and it was just like hitting a wall. Of course, I can't speak for anybody else, but when I walked out of here, I said, wow, they don't like us at all. You mentioned for a fact, Jay mentioned for a fact that he was going to get North Adams involved in this, Northern Berkshire, right at that meeting. I recall that very well. Oh, yes, it was.
No, so Fred,
And
I'll explain
I recall it
that.
well. So,
At that September meeting, let me just talk to you about that. We did have somebody from the Finance Committee there. We had some other,
Hold on for a second. Mr. Mezwar, can you please stand up for a second? Mr.
call you.
Mezwar was present for that meeting, and he's vice chairman of our finance committee.
Yep.
So Mr. Mezwar will be able to verify any statements that are made pursuant to
So
it.
at that meeting, we asked you what your budget was. We didn't ask you, we asked your general manager. He could not answer the question. We asked what type of subsidy you would be looking for. It was yourself, Mr. Kleiner, and Mr. Sanderson. You could not identify the dollar amount. You could not identify the formula. Mr. Kleiner actually suggested that we just put Adams Ambulance on our tax bills like we do with the fire district, and we explained at that time that that is illegal, and we could not do that because you are a private organization.
I know
At
that.
that time, we also talked about, could there be any shared services? Could there be any work being done with Northern Berkshire EMS? And we asked if any conversations had been taken place with Northern Berkshire EMS, and the answer was no, and that Mr. Sanderson at the time said he was not interested in that. We also asked at that time if we could start the conversation about a service zone plan, and Mr. Sanderson told us that he was not interested. Those were all of the things that we were told.
For both
And at
parties.
this point, tonight, on November 30th, what is the dollar amount that Adams Ambulance would be looking for from the town of Adams as a subsidy? Please tell
Approximately
us.
$120,000
That's what you're looking for, of taxpayer dollars.
from the town of Adams. And
And how did we come to that number?
just by, basically, $20 a person, $20 a person in town. That's kind of how we came to it. And it's,
So what would be Cheshire's and Savoy's and Holly's?
but right now, I don't, if we got our collections in order, which we're going to do, we're not going to need that subsidy.
Okay,
Okay? That's what I'm thinking right now, okay? If it was there, if it's possible, eventually, there's gonna have to be. But I think this year, I think we might be okay.
okay,
And that's my own opinion.
Yep.
So,
okay. And I think
that's all I've got to say.
Yep. Mr. Schrade, nope. There was a hand behind you. Yep, go ahead, Mr. Schrade. Yep. I saw your hand first, sorry.
Oh, thanks. Good evening. My name's Bill Schrade. I'm the Executive Director for the Adams Housing Authority. I have a concern. First of all, I'm in support of transferring this over to Northern Berkshire. The majority of my tenants are, I hate to use the word elderly, but they're elderly, with an average age of already in mid-70s, and I have a few already that are in their mid-90s and living strong. We need a service that we can rely on because they do come to our development. And I appreciate everything that the workers do. It's not about them. This support is to make sure that a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's an ambulance service in place to take care of not just, I think about our residents, but there's the Barrett House, there's the Graylock Apartments, there's the mill, on Commercial Street, which we all have that population that does require ambulance service. And, it's just, we can't worry that what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen December 31st, you know what I mean? And I know it's terrible, and, no one wants to see anyone, or a service, be taken away from someone, but the realistic is that we need an ambulance service that's going to be here. And I just ask that you take that into consideration, which sounds like you're going to, but, it's just, I'm very concerned for my residents. And we're in desperate need to make sure that we have a plan in place, that the town has a plan in place that's going to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, right here, yep.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes, and
Sure.
hopefully I won't be too long-winded, right, Joe? But I am long-winded.
State your name, please.
I'm Skippy Hines, and I think most people know me. I'm very opinionated, and I've got a tremendous amount of experience. I'm a retired active duty military nurse. I'm a flight nurse, and I'm a paramedic. And I still fly a few hours a month for Lifestar out of Hartford, based in Westfield. And I recently had the unfortunate experience of having to meet an ambulance. And when I have to call an ambulance for myself, I know it's necessary. I just want to say kudos to the Adams Ambulance people, the EMTs. They were absolutely phenomenal. Okay, and I think I'm a damn good judge of character when it comes to judging medical care. My care was phenomenal to the ER. The response time, I'm sure was less than 3.5 minutes. It was fast, maybe 4 minutes tops. So I cannot say anything negative about that. I'm all for keeping a squad in Adams, okay? I'm all for it. But I do understand owning a nonprofit and being a grant writer myself, the work involved. And you have to do your 990s, and I'm not even sure if Adams did a 990 since 2019, okay? And when you write for a grant, you better have your 990s in order. And asking for help, I didn't ever see anything on Facebook or in the paper saying, is anybody interested in being on the board, consulting on the board? Does anybody have experience? Well, yeah, a lot of my experience came out of North Carolina because I just moved back here 8 years ago, okay? But I have a darn lot of experience in a whole lot of areas, and no, thank you, I'm not going to work in the ambulance. I'm finishing my psychiatric nurse practitioner residency now. I think we do need to think we have to have a futuristic vision, and I think a lot of the stuff that I've heard and read about, I think is phenomenal, and I think Adams can come back and come back better than ever. Maybe not right now, but I think if they get the right board together and they get the right finances, get a grant writer, get a good billing company, get somebody to lobby for your insurance companies, because I was a paid lobbyist in North Carolina, but no, not for medical, for getting rid of the gas boxes for dogs, okay? That was my job in Raleigh, to lobby for that, for a year. And, but, you know, I think if they get all this in a row, I can see Adams coming back super nice and having an extremely wonderful congenial relationship with the folks here. And these guys are the bomb. North Berkshire is wonderful as well, okay? They're all phenomenal. That's all but I think they need to be futuristic and be realistic of where they're at now and look to the future and be able to prove themselves. Look, we got our ducks in a row, we've got all this great personnel, we've got this, we've got our business plan, this is our monetary, this is everything. We're collecting everything that's past due to us. Then come to the town and say, hey, look at how much we've improved in the last 12 months. How about some ching-ching, and see what happens then. And I just think to just flush Adams completely out of the picture wouldn't be good. I think we should always consider them working to get better, to improve, and come back better than ever, all right? My question is for Mr. Meany. Beckett has 24/7 staffing on their rigs. During the daytime, it's a paramedic that stays available, but on nights, it's usually not a paramedic. They don't have enough in Beckett. My brother's the chief in Beckett. Will Adams have someone staffing the ambulance 24/7 in that building with that ambulance? That's my question. Okay, so we're going to have that. So your response time, I don't see, is going to be delayed. That if it is 20 seconds, that's really not that life-altering, okay? 30 seconds maybe. But you're going to have somebody 24/7 in that building.
As long as that unit's not tied up on a 911.
Okay, but if it's tied up, you're going to have one ready to roll to come on an important call, because we all know, yeah, because we all know 5 minutes with bad CPR. See ya, So that was one of my questions, but I think, and then radio communication, I think, is real important, because I've flown in a few times, and when I wanted to have radio communication, I had some issues, and I said to my paramedic, and my pilot said to me, he said, what the hell? And I said, I don't know. So that, that's that. But that's, for whatever it's worth, that's my opinion, and I just want to say, I did improve after coming out of the ER. It was ugly. Thank God for my best friend and my rescue partner, Tammy Baker, because as soon as I called Tammy, she said, I got to put your horse away. And I said, damn it, put him away and get to my house now. So she came and she goes, my God, what's wrong with you? And I said, so she said, you need an ambulance because you can't even sit or stand. And I was fine 30 minutes earlier, And thank God to the rescue came EMS Adams, and they were wonderful. On that note, I must go because I'm sure my horse is stomping at the bit for his feet.
Thank you, Ms. Hines, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm out of here. Thank you, Fred, for everything you do. You're a good firefighter.
This-
And thank you for helping in the barn too with the horses when need be. You're a good man. Bye.
Bye,
Said enough. I rattled, I should.
Yes, if you could state your name, please.
Sure, my name is Tracy Cameron, I'm a resident of Adams. I might add to my resume, I'm also a retired nurse of 20-plus years. I'm not flight, but I can be flighty. First of all, I do want to say a couple of things on what I've heard here tonight. To advocate for the Adams ambulance and to advocate for Fred Ballender, who I know for a fact, Fred has poured every ounce of energy, every minute of his time in the past 6 weeks in trying to save Adams Ambulance from going down. There is nobody who is working harder. I guarantee you he's working much harder than any other board member that may have been affiliated beforehand. This was thrown in his lap out of love for his employees, love for the community, love for his patients of Adams, Cheshire, and Savoy. He's poured everything into it. There is a plan. I did want to respond to your statement, Ms. Hoyt, that at the meeting on Tuesday night, that finances were not discussed. I do believe that when I asked the question of how much money was owed by outside private sectors and insurance companies to Adams Ambulance, the response from the manager was over $800,000,
Yep.
and he made that public.
Yes. But did you see?
Mr. Bellwender also made
budget?
public,
Yep. go
Mr.
ahead.
Bellwender also made public that the Adams Ambulance was currently approximately $200,000 plus in debt. So finances were indeed discussed at that meeting on Tuesday night. So I wanted to just mention that.
Those two numbers were mentioned, but no other financials were presented or mentioned.
Well, that's true, but you
Okay.
stated no finances
Sorry.
were, and those are numbers, those
And
are
we
money
also-
that equals finances.
We also didn't hear what the sale of the building would be. That was a question that was asked, but we were told we couldn't know that dollar amount and if it would offset the cost. But at the first agenda item for the meeting, it was the discussion of finances. The agenda item was talked about, and it was any discussion, and the board sat quietly, and we moved on to the second agenda item. It wasn't until we got further down, and you did ask the question, yes, you did, about what their debt was.
Right. So finances, and I did state, and I'll state again here for the audience and for town folk, that I really believe that how any nonprofit organization, and I'm sure Cheshire is not, as has been stressed, is not out on its own in this financial problem. How any financials how any nonprofit can financially survive knowing that there's 800,000+ that's owed to them. Now, was that aggressively pursued? That's not for me to answer. I think it's been answered. However, it has also been answered that it currently now is. So what I'm getting from the whole thing is basically Adams needs a little more time to solidify the plan of selling their building, because my understanding from the meeting the other night is there's lawyers involved, there's title search, it has to go through the Attorney General. All of this takes a little time. I believe that the date of hopefully mid-December 15th, it would be solidified. Now, do they have to provide you with the exact amount of the sale of the building? I don't think so. They primarily own the building. But if they're telling you that it will take them totally out of the red and give them a good starting point with money in the bank, now they're looking for grant writing. They've already got grant writing initiated. They're going to put out their envelopes for their membership drive. That would be helpful. And as the person who is forming the spaghetti dinner that Mr. Green states is not going to save them, my intention of the spaghetti dinner is no way to save the Adams Ambulance. Even though on the flyer it says, let's save the Adams Ambulance. That was a little bit before I knew more detail. But my whole reasoning for the spaghetti dinner is to show Adams Ambulance appreciation for the 50-plus years that they've supplied life-saving care to our communities, number one. Number two, to show the employees. Number three, just as a thank you. And number four, to possibly show the board that the town is actually behind the fact that they would like Adams Ambulance to continue. This is in no way, shape, or form against Northern Berkshire. I hear wonderful things. I personally don't have a lot of experience with them because Adams Ambulance always responds to our calls. I do want to also state, if I may, that Mr. Meany did mention that Northern Berkshire needs staff to really make this transition go over smoothly. So if there's EMT courses being offered in January, and Northern Berkshire is taking over January 1st, where is that staff? Because my understanding is an EMT training course takes approximately, I don't know. Okay, so who's going to staff and how much staff, if Adams Ambulance does not, my understanding is you have not received one application from an Adams Ambulance employee, and my understanding that is because they're staying till the end and hopefully beyond. Who's going to answer these calls? Who's going to drive the rigs? Who's going to take care of the patients when you have a rig in Cheshire, you got a rig in Adams at the Forest Warren, you're covering North Adams, Cheshire, everywhere else. Who's going to take care of the patients if you don't have the staff come January 1st? It's a little late to encourage EMT training January 1st, when it's going to take a lot longer for those people to complete EMT training.
I have a question I'd like
that's
to just
kind of
insert
my-
there.
one of my-
Does Adams Ambulance Service have enough money in its current bank accounts to cover the payroll for the current Adams Ambulance staff through December the 31st of this year?
Currently?
Yes,
How so?
you just asked. He said yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
thank
So
you.
we'll take them on his word. Did you want to answer?
Reimbursements have come in.
So Deputy Chief O'Neill is going to answer your question about staffing.
No, perfect.
Yep. So if you could actually come to the microphone and introduce yourself. I was like, I might know you, but not everyone does.
So hello, my name's Adam O'Neill, Deputy Chief in Northern Berkshire EMS, and I actually head the Training Education Department. So we currently have an EMT class that is in session. It is due to end, I believe the date is December 15th. And we are starting another class that is an accelerated class over at Williams College come January. And then we've been, since all of this has come to light, in constant discussion about how to strategize to put on an additional spring course. So that would be 3 consecutive EMT classes that we would have put on starting in September. And my hope would be to end the 3rd one come March. How many employees we would get out of that class, we're not 100% sure, right? People would have to pass the exams, both the written as well as the practical exams. And then they would also have to choose to apply at our agency. In terms of current staffing, we are constantly monitoring our statistics, our data, based on call volumes. We can get it as granular as by hour of day. And so by looking at that data and that information, we can utilize that to upstaff and then downstaff at higher levels of time. And as Chief Meany mentioned as well, during typically our peak times, which are between about 10 and 2 p.m. at this very moment, and then again between about 6 and 8 p.m., we are typically able to add additional ambulances to the road. And then I'd also just like to add as well that we utilize a fleet tracking service. So all of our trucks have GPS tracking, and so our supervisors are able to keep a very close eye on the actual location of where our trucks are. So if a call had come in the town of Adams or Cheshire, and we had a truck that was actually closer coming to or from Pittsfield, then we could actually reassign that closer unit in order to take that call and shorten the response times. So do we need staff? Absolutely. Every EMS agency in the entire country at the moment absolutely needs additional staff. But we are definitely doing everything in our power to try to maximize our opportunity to increase our staffing at the moment.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Oh, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is very commendable. Thank you so much that you're doing everything in your power to do that. That's great. Just as Adams Ambulance is doing everything in their power to maintain service and expedite that process as quickly as possible. And I lost my train of thought. I do have one more thing. If you give me one moment, I'm sorry. So in attending the meetings that I've seen so far, I do want to ask, there was a meeting in Cheshire, and the vote was deliberated to the other night. What was it, Tuesday night?
Tuesday night, yep, the Cheshire Board of Selectmen met.
The Cheshire Board of Selectmen met, and there was a vote to have Northern Berkshire EMS. And who voted? Could you tell me who?
I was in the same room as you.
I did not go to that one. I was
with you at the membership
No, I
meeting.
mean the town of Cheshire, the one that was
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah, I didn't attend that meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But what I saw in iBerkshires was that the vote was unanimous. So all 5 of their board members voted to move forward with Northern Berkshire EMS as their primary EMS provider as of January 1st, 2024.
Okay, I do remember what my last comment was now. I do want to praise Mr. Duval for removing himself from this decision based on conflict of interest because he has a family member who works for Adams Ambulance. I do question why Michelle Francisconi, however, did not remove herself from.
I can't answer that.
She
It's
has
a
a family
different-
member, exactly her daughter, who is a
You may want-
employee of Northern Berkshire EMS, so I question that conflict of interest. And also her husband, Tom Francisconi.
I caution,
As a chair,
caution the board legally.
Yes, I was going to say, I would
Ms.
actually.
Cameron's comments, relevant or not, should be directed towards the town of Cheshire.
Correct. We can answer those and we won't address them.
oh, okay, well, I just wanted people aware. And I thank you so much thank you for your time. And I am selling tickets to the spaghetti dinner if anyone is interested.
Thank you. Mr. Summer. Mr. Summer, yep. And again, if you could state your name as well?
I'm Don Summer. I come here tonight, like a lot of citizens in Adams, that have, the only information I had before this evening was talk on the street. But from what I've gathered tonight, I'm asked a question is, if the Adams Ambulance can come in the next month with the sale of their building and the other things that they somewhat promised and get the act back together and have enough money to continue to run, can the board vote some action tonight that would put off them making a contract with the Northern Berkshire Ambulance? If Northern Berkshire Ambulance is ready to take over, was ready to take over at the end of November and are ready to take over in December, I would think that they would be responsible enough to wait until January if in fact Adams couldn't get their act together. I think there's been enough information here that there's been some mismanagement with the Adams Ambulance, and I think they admit to that. But when I hear there's $800,000 available out there that they haven't collected, if they get somebody that can start collecting some of that money and do some of the other things that they said they would do, I think that they probably could make it. I personally would hate to see 50 some odd years of a organization that served the town well not operate. And once you cut them off of the 911, even if they stayed in business, they can't stay in business. They need the 911 call. So all I'm saying is there some way you could consider to put off some action that would cut them off right away?
I would, I'll give you my opinion. So Adams Ambulance is under corrective order. by the Department of Public Health. They have a deadline of December 20th in order to comply with the Department of Public Health's orders. It's a big if all of those items will be addressed and complied with. And the Department of Public Health could pull their license on December 21st because they can't comply with the corrective order. Those are all big ifs. And in the seat that I'm sitting in right now, I'm not comfortable moving forward with a lot of big ifs that are sitting out there. I think what we've talked about is we could vote to go forward with Northern Berkshire EMS as our primary EMS provider for January 1st, and if Adams Ambulance in 2024 is able to correct the ship and, have a plan and their finances in order, that's a conversation that they can come back to the table and see at that time. But from where I'm sitting, having really 20 days left to comply with Department of Public Health's order, or they lose their license, is not anything that I'm comfortable with gambling on at this time. That's my own opinion. And, anybody else can
Well,
comment to that.
I'll also just add legally, as I said before, and I'll reiterate it, just because Adams Ambulance Service wrote a letter to the Department of Public Health saying that they were rescinding their first letter, that they were done on December 31st, the Department of Public Health has taken no action on that letter. And they cannot take action on that until the corrective defects have been addressed satisfactorily to them. Furthermore, and it may be in the process with an unknown, that's the point that the public needs to understand. Going forward with Adams Ambulance Service under the current legal construction is tenuous as to whether or not we can continue with them until the DPH has cleared the issues. They have not taken action on the letter. You could send another letter tomorrow. We asked. I will direct you to exactly who the Deputy Commissioner is and Director of Office of Emergency Services. We asked them, and they said, you are to act as if they are ceasing service on December the 31st, 2023, until you hear from us. And we have a legal obligation to follow that. I will also state that we talked with them with no details because we had none about a sale of a building, et cetera. And that transaction itself is actually reviewed by the Department of Public Health as to whether or not they can. I'm sorry, Fred?
It's reviewed by the Attorney General.
So there's another level of bureaucratic review that has to take place. So this entire plan, although perhaps well-meaning and perhaps successful down the road, the runway that it has to take place, as to, I think, Member Blanchard's point, probably an hour ago at this point, give or take, is it should have been done earlier and it needs more runway time. And frankly, the public health and the public safety of the community can't wait at this point. But again, that doesn't stop Adams Ambulance Service from pursuing any of this. If Tracy wants to donate more time and have another fundraiser, she can. There's nothing that this board is doing tonight that stops any of that. And furthermore, it doesn't stop Adams Ambulance from responding to mutual aid calls, doesn't stop them from answering the town of Savoy, doesn't stop them from answering primary calls in Holly, and doesn't prohibit them from taking transports where they have admitted tonight is where the money is. And in fact, it is entirely possible, with them not having the primary EMS coverage of the town of Adams, they can take more transports and put more money in their coffers and get back on their feet. And that is all fine and dandy, and I don't think anyone sits here and wishes Adams Ambulance to go away. But again, just to focus on that, and I hope everybody understands this, we have an obligation to ensure that when 911 goes through, we have a provider. And I don't think with the holiday season coming up, that we can sit here and wonder what the DPH is going to do on December 20th. Because although they've been responsive now, it doesn't mean they're going to respond very quickly. And we also have no information, no understanding as to how you're going to correct this order either. Because frankly, the communication is still lousy. So that's my perspective, Don, and I hope that gives you a little bit more context.
Ms. Foster, yep.
Kathy Foster, Adams. The state allows for 6 reasons to either revoke or refuse to renew an ambulance's designation as primary ambulance. And I think we all agree Adams's ambulance is the primary ambulance. I don't see anything on those 6 reasons that justifies doing this.
What is the source of your 6 reasons?
Yeah,
Code of Mass Regulations 170.08.
170 what?
It's 170.08, but it's 105 CMR.
yeah,
I have
170.
105 CMR in front of me. 170. Mm-hmm.
.108.
Point 108.
So
No, I have that. Grounds for revocation or refusal to renew designation. The
if
department
the
may
problem,
revoke or refuse.
well, then I
Ms.
just
Foster,
can I
you're
just-
speaking to this board
He's
and to the
right. I am.
public regarding a legal order, and I am now informing this board
you
as
want
to
to
what you're referring
well,
to.
we can get back to that, but you could let me finish a sentence.
So I would like legal context as to what it is that you're referring to.
You.
No, you
Can
did
I
not.
finish my sentence, then we can
Okay.
discuss
hold on.
what the
Sure,
statute
finish your
says?
sentence, and then we'll go back to reading what the statute says.
Okay, so it seems that the worst thing that has happened, that they've done, is all financial. It sounds as though it's turning around. Could be a long process. What Don was talking about is giving them a chance and helping them out. We have a community development office. Our community development office does all kinds of things that helps this community at large. They work on redeveloping properties and turning them into parks, and, I mean, they do all kinds of things. They write grants. They're great at writing grants. That's what they do. Why couldn't it become a project of them to just work with the Adams Ambulance? Adams Ambulance has been wonderful to this town. You talk to any neighborhood and say, what's been your experience with Adams Ambulance? Nobody has anything bad to say about them. So why aren't we helping them? Why aren't we helping them? We have the means to do it. We could make it a community development project to just help them learn how to write grants, or help them find where the grants are. It's within the power of this board. It's within the power of the town to help this company. And I think they should. If you want to talk about that regulation now?
I'm going to talk about 2 things. First, when you talk about grounds for revocation or refusal to renew designation, the important point that I was trying to make was that the department may revoke. That's up to the Department of Public Health, not this board. Secondly, your comment about the community
This
development.
regulation is for municipalities. This is not having anything to do with the department revoking it. This is the town.
No, it isn't true, because this regulation states
Local jurisdictions.
170.108, grounds for revocation or refusal to renew designation. A, the department may revoke or refuse to renew the designation of a regional EMS council in the following circumstances. 2 comments to make. Number 1, this doesn't apply to an EMS provider. It focuses on an EMS council. That's not what we're talking about. And number 2, based on the language in the statute, it says the department. That does not refer to this board. It refers to the Department of Public Health.
All right, look at
I'm going to move on
550.
to the second
No, look at
comment.
550, because it
In terms
talks
of
about the
community
municipality's
development department,
responsibility.
we don't work that way, unfortunately. It's an aspirational statement. The Community Development Department works within a structure that provides public funds to publicly owned properties or otherwise statutorily permitted areas. And it's aspirational. And then the Community Development Department, frankly, does not have the time in order to
Community
do that.
development gives money to people to fix up their apartments. and
Under
their
a structure
houses.
called the Community Development
Right, but it's
Block
not
Grant
public
Rehabilitation Program.
Which is also approved by town meeting to authorize the community development department to search for those grants. So there is no authorization by our body to allow for the community development department to search and write for grants for EMS.
All right, well,
However, there was a resource that was mentioned earlier this evening. Our emergency management director is Amalio Giacino, who is very successful with grants. And when asked, the response was, nope, we haven't engaged Amalio, and he's too busy. But they haven't engaged him. So that also goes back to the organization needs to engage the right people. but they have since said that they have a grant writer. Now, you also know that grants take a lot of time. Are they going to get a grant by December 20th that is going to wipe away their debt?
Well, I doubt it, but I don't know about their finances.
So
I
that's.
mean, I can't answer that, but I doubt
It's
it.
the gamble that I'm hearing, the ifs. And what we're saying is we want to ensure, or at least what I'm saying is I want to ensure that there is EMS coverage come January 1st, which was the date that they told us they were going to close was December 31st. And we want to make sure that we have a primary EMS provider on the other end of 911 in the event that they do close their doors like they initially stated. Because as we've also said, the Department of Public Health has not taken any action on their notice to rescind their notice of closure. We are operating under the same information that we had on November 17th, that the Adams Ambulance Service is closing their doors December 31st.
Okay, I want to talk about the service zone plan, because earlier Jay said it was the ambulance's responsibility to create that, but that's actually not true. It is the town's responsibility.
That's correct.
To,
It is.
the town's responsibility.
Select
Yes.
board.
So, no, not the select board, it's the
It
town's
is. Well,
who's the town?
responsibility.
It is the
It
select board.
involves much more than just the select board. And so what I'm saying is if this town does not have a service zone plan, then you're making these decisions way outside of what the regulations state.
That is an inaccurate legal statement.
Do you want to?
That's what you say.
Talk about what
Happy to.
Office
No,
of,
it isn't. You know, Kathy,
so Office
this
of,
is,
please talk about what the Office of Emergency Medical Services has provided guidance on a service zone plan. If you
yes,
could address
because it's
that.
important to actually understand it. The Office of Emergency Medical Services, and I encourage you to call them. His name is Mr. Singh, Dominic Singh, and he works out of, he's Western Mass EMS. And he will tell you the same thing he told us.
And he was the gentleman who was at the public meeting
He
last
spoke
Monday.
last Monday.
Yep.
He was sitting up front, so where you were sitting, if you look up front to the left, he spoke a couple times. He's going to tell you that a community has to put a service zone plan in place in conjunction with its primary EMS provider. And the community must decide, the select board, the chief executive officer of the town must decide first who that EMS provider will be before it can put together a service zone plan.
Can you give me the citation on that?
111C, I believe. And if you go
That
to the
the same as
department.
that 105?
MGL,
No.
Massachusetts General Laws 111C. It is all available on the MassGov website. Go to Department of Public Health, OEMS. There's a section in there, administrative regulations. There's a whole bunch of variety of other regulations that pertain to the actual ambulance service provider. And then you're going to see a whole variety of other documents under 111C, and then they shift you over to 105 CMR. And you call Dominic. He'll fill you in on exactly everything that we're doing. So the town needs to choose a provider and then sit down with that provider and develop the service zone plan.
So why has this not been done before now? I mean, this was required by law, correct?
2006.
It predates a lot of us.
But you've been here a long time and it still hasn't gotten done.
It was brought to our attention after the March 2022 meeting with Adams Ambulance. And as I mentioned earlier, we asked their general manager if they wanted to enter into discussions about a service zone plan, and he said no.
So does
So-
that mean the town
So
just said
there's
for a year and a half, well, we just won't bother
So
them?
there's a provider saying no.
Could have switched then.
May I just say something? I like a healthy debate, and there's nothing better than that, but I don't like conversations when it comes to, I gotcha, because that doesn't get us anywhere. You know, this, I gotcha, well, go back and forth. Well, then I'm going to try to say this kind of stuff. We're talking about people's lives here, and my feeling is, and I'm going to say it just one more time, that Adams Ambulance has the right to continue. Once they get there, they can continue now if they think they can, that we can't stop them. They're a private entity. But this kind of stuff is, a debate is good, but a lot of people that have come up, they've given great statements, they've made a lot of sense, but I don't get this, I got you stuff. It isn't, I don't know, when I'm talking people's life and death, I think a lot more than just, I got you on this one, and then we go on, this one, but it isn't constructive in short. And I know what happens in town politics, that you get banging heads with different groups of people. You get this push and pull and conflicts with people's personalities. And I don't know, I'm a little guilty for that too, and I'll admit it. But, something like this, you brought up points, and it's just going to go back and forth. So, in short, it's nothing, and I'm going to vote for the EMS because, truthfully, I just don't believe that the time frame that we're told they can turn the Adams ambulance around isn't feasible, in my opinion. It can't possibly be done in the time frame that we're given. So we say, well, we're going to give the Adams ambulance till February 15th to straighten out their position and their financials, and they're on their way. We can't do that. We've got to have somebody that will respond to emergency calls. And, it's that simple for me, because as a selectman, anybody that's in a selectman seat, it's public safety. I mean, that's our thing. And, I can't just say, well, I'll give them a chance because, life is more than just a chance. So, in short, continue, but, let's kind of make it a little more civil. That's what I'm thinking.
Thank you, Joe. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I
So
apologize.
what can the Adams ambulance do that would satisfy you to stave off this decision? Because I agree with what Don said, that if you cut off their 911 money, they can't continue to operate. They're called Adams Ambulance, they're in Adams. I mean, they can't just start going operating in Monterey. So it's a little patronizing to say, well, you'll still exist, you can do what you want, because they can't really do what they want. So what can they do that would make this board feel more comfortable? I mean, could they provide,
things that we could say about that.
could they provide financials? I mean, could they, I'm sure there's something they could do that might be something they should have done a long time ago, but they're willing to do it now.
Rick is going to answer.
I think at this point, for me personally, there really isn't anything. I mean, sentimentally, it'd be great to allow it to stay open and hope everything works out. But you can't base major life decisions on sentimental. Otherwise, I'd be still driving a 1974 Ford Maverick, working at Greenberg's in North Adams.
Mavericks were the best.
You gotta go with, we're talking medical care, fast medical care. And we need to guarantee, as much of a guarantee as possible, that the service is gonna be there.
So how can we get past hope and get to the point where you say, okay, now that you show us this, it looks like a plan that could work? I mean, how do you get there?
You would have to show that it worked.
Well, Ms. Foster, excuse me, go ahead. Rick.
I was gonna say, hope is a great thing. But you're not gonna feed anybody on hope. You're not gonna save anybody on hope. You need tangibles.
Yeah, and I'd like to say too that, we're starting to get kind of bullied on what we've done. But I'm going to say what I said in the first, you have to have a leader. And the Adams Ambulance Service, as everybody agreed, and there'll never be a change in tenor of what one of us says about the service that they brought to this community for 50 years. But their group, particularly their leader, is the person to blame. And he's been like a ghost. I don't even know the guy. He should be coming here and say, hey, I made a mistake. You know, I'm here to appease my mistake. He should have come to all of you personally at a meeting and say, hey, I apologize for what I failed to do for this group. And I'm going to step aside. He should have done that well before you got to the situation you are in now. And people, longtime members, and once again, I'm going to point to Fred. I've known him my whole life. He's a smart man. You must have known Fred, you know, quite readily, you know, some years ago that this isn't looking right. And, you know, that would have been the time to act, and that would have been the time to come to the community in a good faith gesture and came to us. But you came to us after, you know, our town meeting was over, and, you know, we can't just take money out of the sky. You know, I don't think it was anything that we didn't want to work with the Adams Ambulance Service. I mean, that wouldn't have been, you know, the way I would have perceived it. Certainly we want to help with any community organization or any part of a community that helps us. And there's no more better help than what you do for the community and you have done for the community. But I don't want to sit here and be kind of blamed for poor mismanagement. If it's poor mismanagement on the town of Adams, then you have all the right in the world to come to us and, you know, voice your opinion or your displeasure. It happens all the time to us. Taxes, anything. We take the brunt of a lot of things, but I don't want to sit here as a selectman and take the brunt from people who's had poor management. I mean, it's not our fault. You know, I'm just saying that because it isn't our fault. And I don't want to be looked at in my community that I've lived my whole life, know so many people, and I think a lot of people respect me, that I'm a person that didn't want the Adams Ambulance Service to make it. It's not my fault. You have to look at your leaders, and you didn't have a leader, and that's unfortunate.
But we changed that.
Yeah, but now, Fred, yeah, I mean, right now, but so what am I going to do, Fred? Am I going to say, well, oh, yes, you change your leadership. We got about 1 month before we don't know if we're going to get, you're going to get certified or whatever it takes for you to stay as an ambulance service. I mean, there's just so many things in a short period of time. Perhaps you can make some type of an agreement with the EMS, should we vote that way, that if you can get yourself back on the road and come to us and get the okay from the other emergency group that may be taking over. I don't know how the vote's going to go, but I know how I'm going to vote. And then perhaps you can come back. But I can't, just in good judgment and good conscience, say, well, on a wing and a prayer, we're going to let you go, because that might be different for, you know, things that are like kind of minor, like a garden club or something. But when it comes to life and death, I can't do it. And that's,
Thank you, Joe.
When we have a meeting.
Fred, can you come to the podium?
yeah,
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Thank you, Ms. Foster.
thank you.
Once again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step in. You know, we met with John Barrett, okay? And we asked him if there was any state help, some funding that we could get from the state. You recall that meeting? Were you there? I think you were there, I'm not sure.
Nope.
Maybe, I think.
They were held
Anyhow,
at the same
we
time
met
as
with
the
John
select
Barrett,
board.
and his reaction was, okay, what you gotta do, you gotta go to all your, you go to all your businesses.
Yep.
Go to your businesses, and that's where your money's gonna come from, that's where your money should be coming from. I don't think you're gonna get anything from the town. So we did go to the businesses. We sent out 280 notices. 280 notices. You know how many we got back? We got back 25 notices.
Yep.
We ended up with $4,800 out of 280 businesses.
Yep.
So we did know that this was happen. We did know it was coming on. It's probably a lot my fault by not, I didn't get a lot of the information that I should have gotten, as far as knowing that what had to be presented to the board and what wasn't presented to the board. It's a different, it was a whole different world than, but.
Fred, I've known you forever. You've got a heart of gold. You could do anything. I mean, you've given so much of your time, as the lady has mentioned over the years. And, you're just a great person. And I know that you want this to happen so much. And I think I want it to happen so much, but I have to be a realist. I have to look at this as a selectman representing the third largest community in Berkshire County, that we have to have a solid ambulance service. In your group at this present time, 50 years you've given it to us, but you've became lax. And
It just happened.
I know, things do happen.
The hardest thing that I ever had to do was to face our people.
Right.
And say, we are gonna have to close our doors. That was the hardest thing I ever had to do.
Right.
And it killed me. The attorney that we had was supposed to help us, he backed out. I don't know what happened to him, I don't care now.
Yeah.
But we ended up having to explain to him what was happening. And that's when everything just went, I mean, they just, well, that's why I explained that before. I'm not gonna reiterate.
Kick to the curb.
But anyhow.
Our friendship will never lessen. I want to say that.
And I didn't, Mr. Green, I did not accuse you of, I did accuse you of laughing at us, but I don't, okay? I apologize for that remark, okay? That's
Thank
what
you.
I am.
I got one
Thank you.
final thought. Stay here.
One final question?
Yeah, one final thought.
Okay.
Question. I understand the concern about what if they just close suddenly. Like now they say they're doing well, but we've never really known. What if you give them some period of time, and Fred, I think, is authorized to give you access to their financials, maybe give access to Jay, so that at any time you can satisfy yourself that they are collecting on their receivables, that they do have money coming in, that they are not going to just suddenly close their doors. And maybe he can give you more information. Maybe he can share with you about the sale that they have. Anything to just make you feel like the town is less at risk. Because I think that's what we're all talking about. Are we at risk or not? You're going to vote to not extend their contract because you feel the town is at risk. So
We actually don't have a contract. We don't have a contract. We don't have
a
a,
designation as primary ambulance. So if you could be assured that they had the finances in place to continue on, could that change something? And I guess I should have asked Fred before I offered, but he would have to agree to it.
thank you for the comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that something you can discuss before you vote?
I don't see there being any viable discussion, because there's too many parameters that they need to complete in a short period of time. And once again, everything here is well written, but I know what time is, and I think Jade brought it up. Government is slow, and, and to get all of this together in a short time is impossible. I mean, I can say it that readily. So I'm not going to put myself out in a string way out and say, well, yeah, let's give them a chance and we'll see what happens. They can reprove themselves. They have the ability. If all this comes to fruition, then they're going to be a viable group and perhaps come back and work with us, and, we can reestablish our friendship. But right now, I just can't do it, and that's all I'm going to say, because the time is of the essence here.
Okay.
But
Thank
thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Can I have time to say a couple words?
Sure, Josh. Yep.
Be nice.
Sure, Josh, come on up. Yep.
Yeah, I know.
If you would like to state your name and I guess a new title?
Oh, that's, okay. Well, we'll try it on for size. So, my name is Joshua Koch. I'm an EMT basic at Adams Ambulance. And shortly, I will be taking on a joint position as a co-general manager / director with my good friend David Norcross. Dave, could you stand up for a second? David and I will be attempting to step into this position and see what we can do with it. I like the term director, general man. I don't know about general man. I like the term director. I don't know.
Clarify, you're stepping into the role, but you haven't assumed the role?
We're about to get to that.
Okay.
So, I would like to talk about our current general manager, Sean Sanderson. Sean Sanderson has announced his resignation as the general manager of Adams Ambulance. He will be onboarding his replacements. Everything has been very, very amicable, and I believe on December 4th, Monday, that will be his last day as the general manager, and then the new crew is going to step in. Sean has tried very hard. I know that there were a lot of issues. He tried very hard. It's a tough job. He stepped into a lot of issues. He inherited a lot of problems that no one knew existed when he took the job. And so I do want to say he did his best, but it's a job that one person just can't do, so that's why they decided to throw two people at it next time around. So I did want to point that out. I also wanted to point out that we have elected some new members to our board of directors. So we're hoping that with a little bit of fresh blood, we can move on forward in a better way. The communication issues that you experienced with the board previously and with our general manager, they're kind of inexcusable, and I'm not really going to make any bones about that. You know, communication issues happen, but this happened frequently enough that I can't say it wasn't some kind of lapse on our end. So to that I will say that instead of having a president and a general manager to talk to, you're probably going to have a president and two or perhaps three people to talk to, because we're considering appointing someone in our organization whose job is just to talk to you and just to interface with you and make sure that we're all on the same page and you're all getting communicated with. This also goes for the towns of Cheshire, Savoy, and Hawley, regardless of whether their service contract with us is either continued or, in your case, there is no contract, but our coverage area. So we realized that one of the biggest problems that we had was that lack of communication, and that's kind of one of the biggest things that we're going to make sure gets taken care of and nailed down. I also want to point out that I don't know which direction the vote's going to go tonight, but what I do know is that whichever way that it goes, Adams Ambulance's doors are not going to close at the conclusion of tonight. We have plans to stay open. We've shared some of those plans, but they're always in not the initial stages, but at stages where we don't have it nailed down concretely enough that we can actually give you numbers, which is something that I personally understand that you can't really work with. Concepts are great ideas. They're fantastic, but you can't work with things that don't give you solid numbers. So, we're going to focus on getting that done to you as well. Obviously, the primary thing we have to deal with is our OEMS situation. And, I think that we will have no problem clearing things up with them by the 20th. We did send them back. This was not under my jurisdiction, but I do happen to know that we did send them back a plan, and they sent it back again with okay, no, we need more than that. So we know what we need to do for them, and I think that's very manageable, especially because the original date that they wanted that information was tomorrow, and we almost had it. So I think by the 20th we should be all set. That said, I wanted to bring up a couple things that we can work on. You stop me if this doesn't belong here, if you'd like us to discuss this in a future meeting, which I will be pestering all of you about, regardless of whichever way the vote goes. Because I want you all to make sure you understand what situation that we're in at this point, kind of all the time. Because Mr. Meany and his crew, Chief Meany and his crew are fantastic guys, but I spoke to Chief Meany and Deputy Chief O'Neill, and they're willing and able to step in, but it's, as they've said before, it's not something they would rather do. So we would like to get our situation in order so that they can relax a little bit to their territory, and we can possibly reopen negotiations with the select board here and maybe the select board in Cheshire.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the biggest and major things that we kind of came up with. We're only receiving 22% of what we bill for. The national standard is 54%. 22%. We could double our billable revenue and still be under the industry standard. And there's no reason we shouldn't be over it. And I know this because I was the billing administrator for a different organization in the past. It was a part-time position, but I was at it for about 6 months to a year. And I was able to get us over 54% at that organization. So I know it can be done here. It's actually very easy to do that. It just takes a little bit of documentation change. Currently, we're operating at a loss of, I believe, our last billing cycle, our last fiscal cycle, we were at a loss of 200,000. If we were able to double our revenue, we would actually be making profit. It wouldn't even require a subsidy. We'd be doing fine. But we have to get there. Very easy. But we do have to get there. It takes some work. As far as the grant situation, we actually, I know that President Ballwinter spoke about it. Our grant situation, yeah, I think it might have been you, Ms. Hoyt, who brought up in the very first meeting that happened here that there's no record of us having applied for a grant in the last 3 years. I believe we did have a grant with that we did jointly with Northern Berkshire EMS. I think it was for portable vents. That was a joint grant, right?
Yeah, the Lucas's.
Was it the Lucas's?
The vent was actually a joint purchase.
Oh, was it, okay, so the Lucas, okay. So, but we did have a joint grant with Northern Berkshire EMS. Was that over 3 years ago? Okay. So, we had a guy that we were sending to a grant writing class. I believe he's still working on that. We were also approached by someone who has experience writing grants and wants to help us with that. So, that's something that we're interested in getting on track as well. Where am I going with this? I don't even want to use this anymore. I wrote all over it too, so I can't understand. Okay. Along with that, we still want to keep doing fundraisers, and we would like to be giving back to the towns as well. It would be fantastic if we could do that. In the event that, as Fred mentioned, I believe that we could be absolutely solvent on our own without any town or municipal assistance, with a few changes that will obviously take a little bit of time to correct. But if in the future, it did come back and we would need to have another conversation, perhaps we could talk about the service zone plan and changing that around a little bit, and perhaps we could talk about municipal funding, but anything that involved would involve additional support from Adams Ambulance to the communities. No one wants to give money for no reason. You have to get something good back for it. And that's something that we'd like to talk about in the future when it's time to talk about that. There's one last thing that I want to bring up before I stop wasting everybody's time, and that is that I was at the Cheshire meeting on Tuesday, and the Board of Selectmen in Cheshire, they did vote to bring Northern Berkshire EMS on board for their service plan. They, however, also included a provision in their vote that if they wanted to change their minds before the 31st, that was always on the table. So I would like to perhaps hope that that would be on the table for this select board as well. I would like to thank Fred, president of the board, for being here. I don't obviously want to get into his personal matters, but it was a hard struggle for him to be here tonight, and I think we should all appreciate that he was actually able to make it. It was very difficult for him to do so. I'd also like to thank everyone who stood up and spoke and asked questions and tried to get more information. And of course, I'd also like to thank the Northern Berkshire EMS crew. Those guys are fantastic. Most of all, sorry, I'm biased. Most of all, I want to thank our people. I think we're the best crew in the world. Sorry, you guys are a close second, but you're still second. We're the best crew in the world, and I think that we plan to stick around, stay around, and I think you're going to be very happy to see what we're able to bring you in the future.
Thank you.
All righty? Thank you.
I have a question. Is there a contractual agreement that for a period of time should we change it contractually to, is there or does that have to be negotiated?
If the board moves for January 1st, we would enter into a memorandum of understanding, which is the proper way of doing it with Northern Berkshire EMS. But, that would probably take place during the month of December, and because the board's vote is the day after the notice given by Adams Ambulance Service that still stands, by operation of the board's decision, Adams Ambulance has essentially 30 days to keep operating normally.
Right.
Unless otherwise directed by the Department of Public Health, or unless the town's, under the Department of Public Health. I think January 1st for Northern Berkshire was pretty much the same as if it's tomorrow or if it's Monday. And I think that memorandum of understanding could be contingent on whether or not this board receives different guidance from the DP. So I think that's very clear, although there was some, intimation that, oh, shoot, this vote tomorrow is going to stop. It's not. It's effective January 1st, which is the day after notice has been given. So if the board voted for NB EMS tonight, the goal would be to sit down, just like Cheshire is doing, and negotiate with Northern Berkshire EMS on a memorandum of understanding, but there's no way that service zone plan would be undertaken until well into 2024.
Then it would have to be contractually the same period with the three communities, I would think, to make it viable. I mean, if we change to EMS, through the memorandum of understanding, now, would there be a contract made how long they would be our provider?
Yes.
Okay.
Not during the month of December.
No, right,
I would
no.
say after
Yes,
January
right.
1st.
But it would only make sense that the communities that vote for EMS keep the same contractual years together. I mean, it would make sense. They wouldn't have to.
Yes. So we will remain in concert with each other to do that. Cheshire just happened to have their vote
Right.
first.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Just ask one.
One? Yes. Sorry, I have a tickle.
Bree, could you grab her some water, please?
It's okay. I can actually step out and get water, if that's okay, unless the question's directed directly at me. Howard, if you'll.
My question is, if Cheshire and Adams Ambulance actually has until the 20th of December, is it, to meet the criteria?
Health.
If they have until then, okay, because they have been thrown kind of a Hail Mary at the last minute with this possible sale. If they have until then, is it possible, if Northern Berkshire EMS is ready to go, as you say right now, is it possible to delay this vote until, say, the 17th of December, to see if they've come into compliance with whatever they have to do, and more importantly, to see if their plan has come to fruition with the sale of the building, etc. Is that possible? And also, just on a side note, as far as the grant writing goes, I think the issue of, we know that grants do take a long time to go through. I don't think the grant writing is meant to save Adams Ambulance before January 1st. It's part of what the plan is to move forward for sustainability. So it's just a suggestion I wanted to make, that's all, if that was any possibility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we'll wait for Christine. Christine, I think we're ready for a motion.
Feel free to make a motion if you'd like. Okay. My apologies, everyone. Okay.
I move that the town, make a motion. I move that the
Thanks.
town of Adams enter an agreement with the Northern Berkshire EMS to serve as the town's primary emergency medical service provider effective January 1st, 2024. And I will add to this motion that there can be we can re-vote based on the outcome of the corrective deficiency and the financial position of Adams Ambulance as before January 1st. We don't, And I further move that the town administrator take any necessary steps for the Board of Selectmen to execute that agreement.
Okay. So I have a motion by Howard. Is there a second?
I'd like a clarification of what you had mentioned about giving the Adams ambulance time.
Yes, the board had the option before then to delay the agreement with EMS, Northern Berkshire EMS, based on the Board of Health, the Department of Health's recommendation of the corrective deficiency and the financial position of Adams Ambulance. Feel free to change it. Judge.
I just don't understand until when?
Until December 20th, January 1st. We can vote before then. Or not. If you can make a counter motion, I'd be happy to entertain it. This is giving them,
I'm just,
it's giving the opportunity that if they can correct the defective action and the Department of Health endorses them to continue, that we can change our minds.
there's still a lot of healing to do, so to speak, in my opinion.
Well, so we have the option, we don't have to exercise the option to vote. And that was a change based on the comments made, but I'm happy to go ahead and introduce another motion if that doesn't suit you.
Well, is there a second on that motion?
Yeah, is there a second?
I'm just,
Okay.
Well, the reason I always tell you why I'm not going to second it. I'm not going to second it because I don't believe that regardless if you get the order to correct your deficiencies, you have the proper time to run an ambulance service that, quote, is legit, in short. I mean, I just don't feel that. There's too many things that are going to take a long time to come to fruition. I mean, unless you have a buyer, I don't know, there's been talk that you have a buyer, and I've heard names, and I don't want to get into that. But how long is it going to take to, get the money in hand and, and all the things that you need in such a short period of time? Perhaps if we had 6 months, I'd be, willing to, make that motion and second it, but there's a time constraint here that cannot be met. I don't care if you agree or disagree with me, I just believe that you can't meet what you're saying in a short time that you have to do so. And that's why I won't second that.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend my motion.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, so there's no second, then that motion did fail. So if you want to present a different motion, by all means.
I move that the town of Adams enter an agreement with Northern Berkshire EMS to serve as the town's primary emergency medical service provider effective January 1st, 2024. And I further move that the town administrator take any necessary steps for the Board of Selectmen to exercise this agreement.
Okay.
And I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any discussion from the board? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or an abstention? That is unanimous. And I thank you for your time. I thank everyone for their comments. There is no other business to come before the board this evening. This was really the only topic. I will just state, while I have a full room here, we do have a meeting next Wednesday, December 6th at 6 p.m. It is our, the biggest topic on that agenda is our annual license renewal. So we will be here to do that, and I think there's a couple of other agenda items, but we'll get the agenda posted on Monday. But 6 o'clock on Wednesday.
I would just like to say before we adjourn, I wish the Adams Ambulance Service the best. Show us that you can do it and come back and I'm certainly willing to listen and to help in any way that I can, but I'm sorry that I had to vote that way. It's the only way that I could see having the proper and necessary EMS service for our community. And so I was not going to apologize, but I'm going to wish you the best, and I wish that this came earlier on, and it might have been a different story, but the timeline isn't there, and I have no animosity, and I never will, and I just want to thank you for your service, and like the old saying, let's see you make a comeback.
And Josh, to that point, I gave you my business card the other night. You have that contact information.
I do.
Every,
In touch with you.
the door is open.
All right. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone.